The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, coming to you cordless, everybody. It's Thursday night, August 29th, 2024. It's 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 11 a.m. in Singapore, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Sydney, Australia, and here where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis in our sumptuous studio, it's 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I am Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 153, if you want to mark your scorecards at home. I hope you guys had a good day today. Okay, so this show is going to be relatively short, relatively about 40, 50 minutes. And I can't tell you why. We got a lot of stuff going on here, but at any rate, yeah. So our guest tonight is Jazz Shaw, writer extraordinaire, weekend editor at hotair.com, and he writes on UFOs and science for a whole bunch of different publications. We're going to talk the interview tonight, and we've already taped it. We taped it this afternoon. It's on Luis Elizondo's new book called Imminent. Now, we've talked about this guy before. If you don't know who he is, he was the guy who was basically the star of the History Channel series Unidentified. He's the guy who worked for the ATIP office at the Pentagon, who's basically come out and said, yeah, well, now he said the UFOs are real. Now he's saying the aliens are here. And that's the thing. I mean, Jazz and I get into a pretty deep dive on this because in some ways, what he said in his book is not that extraordinary or revolutionary, but he did actually come out and say point blank that the aliens are here, which is the first time anybody involved in the government has ever said that. So that's our discussion tonight. Now, you're wondering, well, Jim, why didn't you have Lou on yourself? Well, the thing is, I didn't even bother to try because I'm sure he has been inundated with interview requests. There's all sorts of articles online. People are talking to him. Now, Jazz said in the interview, and I kind of thought this, Jazz hasn't actually met the guy in the flesh, but he was on an interview panel. He was on a discussion panel with him. So in that way, he has talked to him. But I don't know anybody who actually knows him personally. So I'd like to think at some point we'll get him on the show. But for now, I didn't even try. I thought, well, no, let's talk to Jazz. Jazz comes on all the time. So he's our guest tonight. We don't do Fridays here. We're taking Monday off for Labor Day. Tuesday, we'll be back with a phone-in show. And that's the other thing. Because our show is so relatively short tonight, we're not taking any calls. We're not. So I removed the telephone banners from the bottom of the screen. But Tuesday, it's first night of the week. I go solo and we talk about the news, and I encourage you to call in. Now, the only news I got tonight is that apparently Kamala Harris's interview with CNN ended a few minutes ago. Now, I can't tell you because I look at the conservative news outlets first, and of course they're biased. But based on what I saw, it did not go particularly well. Apparently, because CNN actually asked her some real questions, which no one was expecting. And also, that gets back to my thing is I think the honeymoon's kind of over here. I think the press is getting kind of tired of carrying the water for the Democrats, and they're they've been made fools out of a bit, not just for the last 3 years. I'd say for the last 7 or 8, and I think they're getting tired of it. I really do. So it kind of didn't surprise me that happened, although no one was expecting it. But at any rate, we'll talk about that on Tuesday. The other thing is, so next week, Jeff Myers, our guest next Wednesday. I can't confirm our guest on Thursday, but we're going to have one. The following week, starting in September 8th, I'm taking the entire week off. Reason, the bride and I are going to Niagara Falls. Now, I've never been to Niagara Falls before, and this sounds really romantic, right? Yeah, we're I'm not kidding. We're going with 14 of her relatives. That's right. 16 of us are going to Niagara Falls. So that should be interesting. I got to admit, I love her family. They're fantastic. These people know how to have fun more than anybody else I've ever met. So I'm looking, we're going to have a good time, but no, not exactly romantic outing at Niagara Falls. So we're taking that entire week off. Now, when we come back, I'm seriously thinking, I will announce this next week if we do anything about it, about changing the starting time of the show 1 to 2 hours earlier. Right now we start at 11 p.m. Eastern. I'm thinking about starting at 9 or 10 p.m. Eastern. And you think, well, that's, just make a decision. But the problem is we share this studio with another company, which is the primary reason we've been going live at 11 p.m. because we got to make certain they're out of here. So I got to talk to them and we'll see. But anyway, that's where we're at on that. So I'll let you know next week what's going on. For now, we're gonna talk to Jazz Shaw, but before we do that, we're gonna run our commercial for Calling News. They're our sponsor, and here we go with that. So if you've watched this show before, you know about Calling News, because we talk this up all the time. They pay us to do it, but that's okay. I used to work for this company, and I'm very proud to be associated with it. It's a fantastic product. What is it? It's a news aggregator. So you're thinking, well, there's zillions of news aggregators, but Conk News is different than all the rest of them. Here's how. First of all, their servers go out every 3 hours and go to 75 different news sources and collect all the news stories that have happened since the last time they made that pass, which, like I said, they do every 3 hours. So they get all the news stories that happened in the last 3 hours. Now you're thinking, well, that's no big deal. Well, it is, because here's what happens. If you go to most other news aggregators, what happens is that they will list the top stories from every particular news source, like the top stories from Breitbart and the top stories from Fox News and the top stories from Red State and all that sort of stuff. That's not what Conk does. Conk News takes all of those stories, hundreds of them, and arranges them on the front page in chronological order. Here's the key, regardless of the source. So the newest stories at the top, doesn't matter where they're from. And we're looking at the front page of Conk News in real time right now. Now, I pointed this out before, that because of the timing of us doing these commercials, we do them almost at the same time every night. The top left stories, usually from hotair.com, just because of the way they post their stories, because of the way they post the timing, the post time. So, and this is true too. And the reason I know that is because you'll see there's a little logo in the bottom left corner underneath that picture of Kamala Harris. And that's the logo for Hot Air. Now, if you click on the logo, you go to the front page of Hot Air. If you click on any of the photos for the stories, the photos are from the stories themselves, or if you click on any of the headlines, and the headlines are not rewritten, they're the actual headlines of the stories, you go directly to that story. There's no interstitial page. There's no ad, nothing. On the front page, you go directly to the story. And in that sense, Calling News, if you're an old fart like me, it's the closest thing to an old-time newspaper. It's the closest thing you'll find to it online. And here's the real amazing thing. It's free. And it's not just free in the sense that, well, you got to sign up and register and unsubscribe and all that. No crap. You go there, it's at conk.com, and you go to Conk News, and all you have to do is read and look. There's no login, there's no subscription, there's no registration, nothing. They run a few ads on this page, but still, you got to make a living. So at any rate, I can't stress this enough. This is the best single news source on the internet, period. You go and it doesn't cost you anything other than maybe a couple minutes of your time to check it out. Go to conk.com, or you'll see it at the banner at the top of the page. You can go to conk.news too, CONK.news. Either one works. So yeah, check that out. Believe me, you won't regret it. And now, folks, here's Jazz Shaw. Joining us from his home in upstate New York, journalist extraordinaire and science writer for Salem Media, and our friend Jazz Shaw. Hi, Jazz. How you doing?
Well, as can be expected, Jim, under the current circumstances. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I wanted you on here specifically to talk about Lou Elizondo's book, Imminent. And it's really interesting because he pretty much goes farther than any other former official from the military, and basically says straight out, the aliens are here, get used to it. Is that what you took from this, or?
Yeah, he does. I'll probably say some things that make me hope that he doesn't watch this, but
Oh, before you go on, man, you've told me before you know him. You've talked to him, right?
I've done. I don't know him personally. No, I apologize if I
Okay.
left you with that impression. I've done a couple panel shows with him,
Yeah,
and he's a great guy.
seems like it.
I have tremendous respect for him. He has a tremendous record. There are some inconsistencies if you've been following the story closely over the years, and there's even inconsistencies within the book. For example, I'll start out. Lewis said forever that I was the head of a classified UFO investigatory program called ATIP when I was serving. And on the cover of his book, if you look at the bottom line, it says former head of the Department of Defense's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Luis Elizondo.
Yeah,
But inside the book, he says something, I won't say the exact opposite, but very different. He kind of implies that ATIP was an offshoot of OSAP,
right.
but nobody else is saying that.
Yeah,
And he also, in the book, says that I was recruited by others that were already working on this, but I wasn't technically the manager or anything. We were all equals. So is that a difference? That it is? Am I being too picky? I don't know.
I don't know if you are or not. As of this week, and you've talked to Susan Go, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Goff, by the
Okay.
way.
Goff, excuse me. So she is still claiming that he had no role at ATIP. That they're still saying that, and I'm just wondering, is this a matter of
No,
syntax?
can I correct you again?
Yes, that's exactly why I'm
And I
asking.
apologize.
No,
She
please.
never said he had no role. She said repeatedly, and I had private conversations by email with her. And at one point, I apologized to her because I had been questioning what she was saying. What she actually said, and it's been put out at this point dozens and dozens of times, that Lou Elizondo had no assigned duties at ATIP.
Oh, okay. Right.
And the things that he has revealed in other interviews and some things that pop up again in the book suggest that that's true. He and a small group of other people were working on this, but they all had different primary roles in the intelligence community, and this was something they did of their own volition when they had time to do it.
On the
But
side.
they weren't
Yeah.
billing any hours to anything called ATIP.
Right. Right.
So she was technically correct, and that's what the Pentagon's very good at, particularly
That's exactly
Susan Goff.
exactly my question to you. Is like, is this just a matter of syntax? Of exact wording?
I believe it is. That's something else they're very good at. David Grush came from inside the same community, right? And when he first came out and gave his first interview with News Nation, and he slipped up a couple of times and said like alien or something. But for example, his first big interview with Ross Coulthart, when he first came out and that news broke, Ross said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it right in front of me, but he said, "But you're saying we have the craft and the bodies of extraterrestrial beings," and Grush would jump in and correct him, and say, "We have non-human intelligence." And when pressed, he would say, "Extraterrestrial implies that we know where they come from." Take that to the next level. He's implying, yeah, we got some stuff, we got no idea, but we also don't know really exactly where it came from. Did it come from another planet? Did it come from another dimension? Did it come from another time? Yada, yada, yada. There's a few people out there, on the extreme right wing in the Pentagon who don't think it's any of that. They think it's all demons and angels, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't nailed that down. And Elizondo gets into some of that in the book too.
Yes.
But he also goes a little further and says, well, it could be some from column A, some from column B, So non-human intelligence is a more generic thing. But when the Pentagon reviewed all the information in that one report and they came out and put out their own historical report, you'll notice what they said in their conclusion that ticked everybody off was, we've never seen any direct evidence of extraterrestrial technology or extraterrestrial beings. They never say non-human. They
Yeah.
just say no evidence of extraterrestrial. And that, in a way, if you look at it like kind of with your eyes squinted past the back of your hand, they're all sort of saying the same thing. It's like, well, we've seen stuff we can't explain, but it's not evidence that it's definitely extraterrestrial, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what they're saying, but the message is clear. They want you to take away from that, no, there's no aliens.
Yeah.
That's what they want you to take away. But they also don't come out and say that clearly either. So you're very perceptive when you point out that point. This is a matter of parsing your language as carefully as possible, is my interpretation. And a lot of that shows up in Lou's book.
Did you perchance see Coulthart's interview with Elizondo on News Nation a couple nights ago?
I watched the first 10 minutes of it. I have it bookmarked on my YouTube page. I haven't gotten to the rest of it. I've been dealing with some health issues and things, and I haven't gotten around to it yet. But
Okay, so
I'm working on it.
Right. I'm going to run this by you because you are very astute in these matters. I respect Coulthart greatly. I think he's a great journalist. He's a great interviewer too. But this whole 1 hour conversation kind of came off kind of stilted, and I'm wondering if that's because Elizondo had to pre-clear the subjects with Coulthart to get past the security clearances. In other words, the conversation seemed kind of stilted to me. It was like, Coulthart asked a question, he responded, and the questions, it's not that Elizondo knew what the questions were going to be. It's kind of like the whole subject matter was kind of pre-cleared ahead of time. They weren't going to talk about anything he couldn't talk about. And as far as I can tell, Elizondo's very good at doing that, even in real time, in the moment. He's very good at parsing his words very carefully. But that said, I mean, this is a quote out of the book. Quote, "We are not alone in this universe, and it's a simple fact. The U.S. government has been aware of this for decades." He actually did say that. So.
Yeah, but then again, what does "we are not alone" mean? Does that mean that there's other advanced technological species physically somewhere else in the universe? Does it mean that we might find squid on one of Jupiter's moons? Well, then we wouldn't be alone, but that's not exactly anybody we're going to getting into a big, trade agreement with. And again, Elizondo is good with that, and I use good sort of speciously. He doesn't get too specific, and he follows the David Grush pattern in that. I'm not trying to run down the book, and I before I forget again, I will mention he did give lists of names of
Yes.
some people and companies
Yes.
where he says things have been held, biologics have been held, they've been transferred around so long, they've lost the complete trail of I'm losing the word of who had it first and where it went next and all that. But he even Lou doesn't come out and say verily so. He gives a lot of half answers that support David Grush. That was the point I was driving at. It's like there's one more person who was obviously deep inside all of this, but he doesn't go real aside from that list of names of a few people and some companies and military locations where people should probably look. And by the time the book comes out, they probably already moved it anyway.
Yeah.
That's about all there is that adds to the David Grush story. Mostly it's just confirmation of David Grush. And again, I don't say this to minimize the book. I don't say it to minimize Lou. But there's not a whole lot of new ground. I was waiting, and in the interview, again, maybe they do more later and I missed it, but he said he had been involved in the program. And he does bring up that he did some remote viewing at one point,
Yes.
which I'd heard that before in passing in a couple of interviews, but it's the first time I heard it coming straight from him in his book. But I was kind of waiting for, yeah, I was part of the crash retrieval program. I'm one of those guys you've all been waiting to hear from. I touched the craft. I saw the beings, And as far as I know, there's none of that in there.
No.
This
That's
is still second-hand information, just
Yeah.
like David Grush was second-hand information. What we want to hear is from the people who went up and allegedly there's a captured UFO in one of these storage facilities. It's got a hole in the side. They stuck their head in. They looked around. They touched it. It was the size of an SUV on the outside. It was the size of a football stadium on the inside. How do you do that? Who knows? Things like that. Those are the people we want to hear from. And people that actually touched the physical specimens, because some of these same people that are allegedly some of the 40 sources that David Grush had, they tried to do DNA tests on some of them, and they kind of had DNA, but it wasn't real, complete DNA.
Yeah.
Like maybe they were sort of biological robots.
Yeah.
Which would be kind of weird.
Yeah.
But there was none of that in the book that I've come to so far, and in the interviews. If that was in there, I think that would have been one of the bombshells that would have shown up in everybody's reviews already. So again, I think I'm glad he got the book out. Glad he made it through DOPSR. There's a lot of stuff in there. I'm amazed that he got approved, but it's still it doesn't go any further in any meaningful way, except a couple minor points, than how far David Grush went. And we don't get to turn the page and go to the next place until, and people have been saying this for so long, if they're going to come out and admit this is all real, if they're going to come out and admit that what these people are saying is true, at some point, somebody needs to wheel out a craft. Somebody needs to wheel out a body. It needs to be done in public, not just in front of the press, but in front of engineers, doctors, experts. Allow the press to follow them around. Try to get some samples. Go do some testing. Have journalists watch the sampling. Have doctors take the samples. Have journalists watch them, put them under the microscope. Come back, give us the results. You give us that much, and they're all scratching their heads like, no, we don't know where this came from or what it's capable of, and we don't know what these alleged creatures are. If we get all that, then it's done. That's disclosure. We don't have all the answers. We don't know the origins, but that's good enough. Then can you say, is it true that we're not alone? Absolutely. We're not there yet.
Yeah. God, I have so many things I want to say based on what you just said. Now I've almost like I'm overburdened by thought. I wanted
I know
to.
I run on a lot. I'm a chatterbox. My
That's
apologies.
all right, but that's why you're great on a talk show, man. That's what we do. We talk. I don't know if you figured that out. there's there's not a lot of visual shit going on here.
Yeah.
So, uh, the thing that I found it interesting about the Gresh, for someone who supposedly was, involved in the military and Pentagon matters. And the thing is, I think the proof of this, and like you said, and like we've been talking, uh, the fact that the book had to get vetted by the DoD, to me, is proof enough that he was involved. Because if he wasn't involved, they wouldn't have had to do that. And it's pretty obvious. Was it you or somebody else that told me they spent a whole year doing it? Did you tell me that?
Well, I don't know if I'm the one who told you, but I've told that to several people, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's already been widely reported. He finished the book last summer,
yeah,
and it took damn near a year to make it through DOPSR.
yeah. And I don't know
And
I don't know. I have a Kindle copy. I don't know about your hard copy. In my Kindle copy, there's still a few black marks, um, which I assume they did at the last second. Or
oh, there's some in the book too. Yeah.
yeah, he still goes farther than anybody else involved in the military. I mean, it's like my big bitch, and Christopher Mellon wrote this a couple of years ago in some famous article. And I can't remember where the article was, that no one in the Pentagon will say the A word, and the A word was aliens. And to me, well, okay, Elizondo's finally said that. He said the A word, So I don't know if that's the way you look at this, or
The first person I was doing an interview a few years back. I don't remember which show it was, but I had gotten an inside tip that somebody was going to say the A word, and it was going to be Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York.
uh-huh.
And I said that on a show. And at the end of the following week, they invited me back because she had come out and she had said aliens. And 2 days before that, it was Hicks from the Defense Department. And I'd also heard rumors this was coming, that she was going to say the word extraterrestrial. What she actually wound up saying that week was extraterrestrially, but I took that as a win, and I was like, that's
Okay.
close enough.
Yeah.
So that happened a while ago with members of Congress. It's been pulling teeth to get anybody from the Pentagon and the intelligence community to say that.
Yeah.
But now it's out there. They're still denying it at Arrow,
Yeah.
as best they can, but it's getting said a lot more. So we are where we are. We're not at the finish line. I don't even know if we can see the finish line from here.
So have you got to the point of the book where he talks about the legacy group?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for the viewers, what Elizondo means by legacy group is those are the people who don't want any of this information to come out. Basically, that's the group of people in the Pentagon that does this. And then also he talks about the religious people, like you alluded to, and I find this really fascinating. So, is their position that these things don't exist, that these are just kind of like screen memories of demons, or I mean, what do you have any insight on what they're thinking at all?
I mean, we're talking about the people that, for people that follow this closely, you've probably heard of the Collins elite,
Uh-huh.
inside the Pentagon and the intelligence community. And they do really believe that at least some of it is intradimensional, or pick a word, biblical, whatever, creatures. My immediate response to that is always, okay, demons, fine. I'm not the most religious person in the world, but I know the lore, and I do consider myself, to be somewhat religious. And if you want to say there's demons, who am I to argue? But my first question is, would a demon really die in a plane crash? And why would a demon need a plane in the first place?
Well, yeah, that's right. And also, what are you alluding to in the plane crash? What exactly
Well,
are you?
beings showing up in things that wreck at
Yeah,
Roswell and Tritium and every place else, you know. And oh, they found beings. So you're saying those are demons? How did they die? And
yeah.
why did they need a flying saucer or a triangle
Well, yeah,
or
that's
something
my
like that?
question. Do they say these things are actually real? That's the thing. That's the thing I can't get around. I mean, I can understand angels and
Oh
demons
yeah, the
flying.
Collins elite definitely believe there's something going on
Uh
and
huh.
things are being seen. But it all comes down to, what do you believe it is? Is it secret Chinese or Russian technology? Is it our technology? Is it aliens? Is it time travelers? We're back to the same list. And you have the one group that's like, nope, it's demons. Shouldn't be messing with this. Drop the whole thing. You're
Yeah.
gonna get yourself in a lot of trouble. So I don't know. I'm not really a Collins elite type person. But
Did you get to the part in the book where he talked about alien implants? Have you read about that?
no, but I did hear it covered in one of the interviews. I haven't gotten to that part yet. But
All right. The really interesting thing about that is that Elizondo says that the doctors at the VA had trouble removing this thing because it actively avoided them. In other words, it was
right.
moving around. And the thing that struck me about this is that's exactly what Whitley Strieber said like 30 years ago about an implant he had in his ear. He said he tried to have it taken out, and the doctors gave up because they said it was literally avoiding them, and they finally threw in the towel. And supposedly he still has it in there. I mean, I don't know. At least he did then. I don't know now, but you know,
There's been a lot of those reports, and this is another one of those cases. And once again, absolutely no offense intended towards Elizondo. Um, these are not new stories.
yeah,
These stories have been with us for generations.
right,
Okay, it goes all the way back to Betty and Barney Hill.
yeah,
You know, they've been around. They get more stuff added to them as time goes by. It seems like the legend grows, the lore grows, things like that. And yet here we are, start the clock in the mid 1940s, wind it up to 2024. People have extracted implants. There's a couple doctors that have taken things out, but they're tiny and they're hard to pin down. And we've never seen a metallurgical study or anything that definitively points to them not being something that, something unusual to be sure,
yeah,
but not definitely something that might not have just grown naturally in the body and developed a protective shell of biological material around it, or somebody that when they were younger was working in a metal shop and a chip shot into their arm and the body wrapped something around that to protect itself, which does happen, you
yes,
know.
right,
So are they alien implants or are they things like that? As far as I'm concerned, jury's still out, has not been proven. Just like the crash retrieval parts, Art's parts that's been making all the rounds. They've done all the testing, as far as I know, that can be done at some of the best labs, and we don't know what those parts are. They don't really make any sense, but they're also, it's nothing that couldn't have been produced here at some point in the past,
uh huh,
with no suggestion as to why anybody would make something like that. Really weird combinations.
right,
But some people point to that and they go, well, see, then it's not alien.
yeah.
And my response to that is, well, but it is a weird combination. And why would we do that? And why would someone else do that?
Elizondo talks about that in the book. He
He,
talks about the fact that there's metal. Some of these parts they may be of exotic material, but they're nothing unusual in that you couldn't find on Earth. But on the other hand, the isotopic ratios in these combinations are something are make no sense whatsoever. That's what you're talking about.
yeah, the isotopic ratios, you're getting down to really the nitty gritty fine grain. But everywhere we look in the universe, even now that we have the deepest telescopes able to capture signatures of everything it finds, the entire universe is made out of the same set of elements,
Yeah,
naturally occurring elements, from one all the way up through it's been 50 years since I took chemistry,
I think
116
we're
or
at
something like that.
117 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right up there. And the same elements exist so if something came here from Moscow and something came here from the Pleiades, it's probably made of all the same elements
Right.
because that's what the universe is made of.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a definitive argument one way or the other, personally.
Yeah. Have you ever heard this theory? You were talking about the DNA earlier, about the fact there's a lot of people who think that maybe DNA is a constant in life in the universe, but it's just interpreted locally in different ways. Like I've heard, I don't have no idea if this is true at all. Obviously, I've heard that some of these gray aliens, where we have 4 elements in our DNA, they have only 3. Something like that. But it's still it's exactly what you're talking about. It's still kind of sort of DNA, but it's not like ours. Have you ever heard that?
I've heard various theories of that from some pretty smart people. But then again, the deeper we look at some of the more exotic species right here on our planet that we know are, I almost use the word native, who live here in numbers wherever they came from. The best examples are some of the really bizarre relatives of the octopuses and the squid. They have totally different biological structures, and their DNA is weird.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
DNA for sure,
Right.
but it's not like the other stuff that's living in the water with them. It's
Yeah.
structured differently,
Yeah.
but it's recognizable. So if we take that as a benchmark, well, then if you found something that evolved on another planet, then maybe it has weird DNA compared to ours, or maybe we're the ones with weird DNA. I don't know if you've ever heard the theory. We have Rh positive and Rh negative
Yes.
blood types,
Right.
and the vast majority of the population is positive.
Yeah.
But then at one point in history, we suddenly started getting negative,
Right.
showing up in pockets. And there are people who believe that that was a genetic alteration, perhaps done externally.
Yeah.
Is that true? I have no idea.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
We don't know. We're just 2 guys sitting in our apartments, just like gabbing. We don't. All right. Last question. What where do you think that, like you said, I mean, I'm in agreement with you that in the long run, Elizondo's book doesn't move the ball forward much, but it does a little bit. Do you have any
a little bit.
idea? You got a prediction of what happens next?
Oh, God. I hate predicting the future because I'm always wrong. I see it going, there's one of 3 ways. One, somebody recently asked me in an interview, what's your greatest fear about the entire UFO extraterrestrial topic? And I didn't even have to think for a moment. My greatest fear is that this is all bullshit.
Oh,
When we finally get to the bottom of it, it's all
that
bullshit.
that's fascinating. I gotta admit, that's never occurred to me ever.
Oh, it's occurred to me plenty of times, and I lose sleep over it because there's another plausible explanation that people are seeing things. It's too much to cover up. They demand answers from the government, and the government, as much as they pretend to object, and they want to keep everything classified, and they don't want to tell you anything, and they want to deny FOIA requests, the government's actually personally thrilled to have people looking for aliens. Because so long as we're doing that, we're not looking into what they're really friggin' doing.
Yeah,
That's
right.
probably a lot worse. And they've done a lot worse in the past. So that's one possible direction.
So you're saying that in your scenario about it all being bullshit, that all of this stuff is generated by the military, and they're thrilled to have us off talking about aliens.
I won't say generated. A lot of it comes from the lore. A lot of it comes from the public who see things. My wife and I have seen 5 UFOs. I don't see any way that was something we created, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
that's
true. Yeah,
it might all be really dark, just black book stuff. And they'd rather have us talking about aliens than talking about what they're up to at DARPA, you know? So that's one possibility. Second
We've
possibility,
talked about this before. I get back to the thing what Richard Dolan said, and that is there's a small cadre of people in the military, a few hundred or a few thousand people that are living 100 years in the future from the rest of us. And I think that might be true. I don't know.
maybe. The next possibility is that at the other extreme end of the scale, we always hear there's more whistleblowers coming. There's been a few names, Sands, a few others that have come out who either somehow make it through DOPSR or somebody goes for catastrophic disclosure, and they come out with some actual proof, and it turns out, yeah, the Pentagon's been lying. It's all real. Now we need to get down to studying this. Somewhere in the middle between those two is that the government has been saying, no, there's nothing to see here, even though they know there's something to see here, but they just don't want to admit it. And the truth is, they don't know all that much more than we do.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's the other direction this could go.
Yeah.
And if there's anything the government hates to admit more than anything else is they don't want to say there's something in the skies. We don't know what it is, and we don't know if we can protect you from it.
May I interject?
Because that means we have failed.
I think that's highly likely, actually. Do you? That they don't know what's going on?
Of the three, that's currently my favorite.
Yeah. Mine too. Mine too. Jazz, I told you we keep this half an hour, and we're at half an hour. So I want to thank you for joining us today. Yeah, you take care. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
You too. Thank you, buddy.
That's Jazz Shaw. He's the weekend editor for hotair.com, and he writes for science and UFOs for all sorts of different publications. The Debrief, Salem Media. Love having him on. Love talking about this. He has some really, really. I hope you enjoyed that. I think he has some really, really good points. He's obviously given this a lot of thought. The other thing is, and I don't know if this came out, he knows a lot of people at the Pentagon, and he talks to them all the time. So he is kind of, in that sense, he's kind of getting the inside scoop on a lot of stuff. As much as he referred to this, as much as of an inside scoop as anyone can get, really. Anyway, I'm hoping someday we have Luis Elizondo on this show. We'll see if we can figure that out. And that's our show for tonight, folks. We're coming back on Tuesday, September 3rd, taking Monday, Labor Day off, and we don't do Fridays here ever. So I hope you guys have a good Labor Day weekend. I know I'm planning on it. And we will see you. It's the last day of summer. It'll be the first day of fall, whatever the hell it is. So anyway, yeah, we'll see you on Tuesday. You have a good weekend, and we'll take care. We'll see you.